retrospect, you're like, man, that was like the poorest thing we've ever done. Like, how did we survive that time in our lives? I think that's why it's such a good book. You might not relate specifically to whatever they're doing in this book, but you can relate it back to your own family or people that you know closely and say, oh yeah, we have experienced that as well.
And if one of these, I guess, one part of her story happened to you that you can relate to, you personally look back on that part of your life and you're like, that was the worst time of our life. And you like kind of go, woe is me, blah, blah, blah. Whereas this entire book, she's like, oh no, it
just happened.
Yeah, it just happened. That's just life.
Yeah.
That's just how it worked.
I actually like that part about the book a lot. Is it was a very easy to read narrative. She just said that these things were happening. She didn't ask for sympathy or pity. She was just telling the story. It actually read like a fiction novel. And like at times I had to remind myself it was a memoir because it was just so fluid of this happened, this happened, this happened. It wasn't like, doesn't that suck for me? Like, don't you feel bad that I was poor and sad and like these things happened to me? Like, no, it was just...
She never did that.
No,
she said, this is what happened. Mama did. This is what Papa did.
Yeah.
This is what I did. This was my role. This was my sister's role. This was my brother's role. And this is just how we did it. And it's very like honky-tonk.
Yes.
I don't want to condemn anyone at all while we record this podcast, today's episode specifically, because your reality is different than my reality.
Yeah.
And your expectations of life is different than my expectations of life. So reading this book it definitely opened my eyes to how even homelessness is sometimes preferred for some people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Where you don't even think about that. You always wonder, or you always think, well, we need to get all homeless people off the street. Well, maybe they want to be a free spirit, nomad kind of person.
That's a good point. Because there are points in the story where, you know, they're choosing what seems to be a lifestyle that I might not choose. And it really puts you in the perspective of, why are they choosing this? Why would they want to live this way? But then, I mean, like, the kids are happy. Like, everyone's happy. They're, like, treat everyone else nicely. It doesn't seem like they're hurting anybody. It just seems like just a normal, quote-unquote normal kind of lifestyle where you're just like, I'm just going to live every day and hope it's amazing.
Right.
They don't worry about where they're living. They don't worry that if, you know, they have indoor plumbing or something. Like, they don't really know. They don't worry about that.
Whereas if I were to come into that situation, I'd be like...
knowing what you know now. Yeah. Like, living how you live now. Like, if you're suddenly homeless, of course you're going to feel a little differently. But these people kind of, like, grew up poor. They don't know any different. And so the fact that they're homeless or they're in between homes. I mean, technically that's homeless, I guess. Yeah. Doesn't really affect them. That's just part of life. It's just what do they call it? The skedaddle. Yeah. It's time to do the skedaddle where they have to leave town and everyone's like, okay,
because
here we go.
Something happened as far, like, likely illegally to either the mom or the dad, and they're like, well, all right, kids, it's time for the skedaddle.
Yeah, grab one thing you want and let's go.
And then they all got into a car that doesn't work.
Yeah. And for us, that sounds crazy. But for them, like, the kids were like, yes, the skedaddle.
Right.
And, like, let's do this. I'm ready for a change.
And one of the things that I guess was one of the biggest highlights, I say this every single podcast, I always want to take away what is my biggest takeaway? And for me, it's no matter what situation you're in, you don't have to be high maintenance. You can make it work. And if you don't have plumbing, it really is not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Figure it out. Go get a shovel and poop in the backyard or whatever it takes. This entire book hones in on, I guess, the poorer people of America, and that sometimes it's not something that they hate. Sometimes that's
just their life.
It's what they choose.
Yeah.
That's what they want to do. And the entire book, the mom, like you said, is an artist. And anytime the kids would say, please go get a job, she said, no, I'm not going to get a job because that's not what I do. I am an artist, which me as a reader and me as, I guess, a middle-class human being, I was reading it and saying, what the hell are you doing?
Yes.
Take care of your kids. You are being so selfish.
Yeah.
I hate you.
I wrote that down too.
Like, go get a job and make sure that your kids can eat.
Yeah.
But I also, on the other hand, I need to commend her for sticking to what she wants to do and her passions.
For me, like, I did feel a lot that she was being too selfish. But at the same token, it was, gosh, she was still teaching her kids these values that, like, it doesn't matter your skin color. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. We're all just humans living. And I was like, wow, that's such a good message to tell your kids throughout their whole lives. But I still couldn't help feel like this mother was being selfish and refused to take care of herself. Same with the father. They refused to take care of themselves for all of these kids. And the father was a drunk. I think in one part of the book, Jeanette, the memoir,
the writer,
author, the one who wrote it, says that her only wish for her birthday is for her dad to be sober. And that's like I've never really known someone who's an alcoholic, so I can only guess that that's a huge ask of somebody. But he like tried his damnedest to do it. But as soon as somebody called him poor, inadvertently called him poor, they're just saying like poor, like, oh, it's sad, like unfortunate. But he read it as like, you're calling me poor, I can't provide for my family. All of a sudden it's triggered to go drink again. So, I mean, it's just the part of me that is the middle class white woman is saying, gosh, like, why can't you just stay sober? This is like your daughter's one wish. But I think that's why I enjoyed it so much, is because it's just this family surviving in like probably a normal situation for them and their family and their history. But for me, it's just so out there that, like, I can't even fathom that this happened and is happening to people, and they think it's normal. It's just so interesting. Like, this person's reality is so different than my reality.
Right. Because I guess the things that I'm working towards is having a nicer home, whether it be getting new carpet or painting my house or getting, I don't know, watering my front yard, whatever it is. That's not a priority for other people, which when you put it that way, yeah, that makes sense. But when you say not having a home, not having water, not knowing what you're going to eat the next day is completely normal and okay for the next person, that's a hard barrier for me to get through.
I agree.
Be like, what?
I think that's why it's a good book to read, is because it's just not like how we think life is.
Right.
And in a way, this is the American dream. It's a different perspective. You think of the American dream as like pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and finding your way in the world. And in a way, this book is that. It's this family. I think the dad was in a war, maybe, or like was military.
I don't remember that.
Maybe I'm making that up.
I can't confirm or deny that.
But nonetheless, he's doesn't have a steady job as it is now, and it's just a story of him trying to make himself stronger according to his morals, in order to live his best life for his family.
Right. In
which his dreams are different than my dreams, obviously.
Sure.
Same with the mothers. They just have like different dreams than I do. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad American dream. It's an American's dream. There's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Right.
So it was a nice look into, someone else's life.
Right.
Someone else's dreams.
And I will commend them for putting their values above material things. Both their mom and their dad put what they believe in, what their values are, what they think, I guess the deeper issues, they put all of that above the basics of life.
I kind of agree, and I
guess
disagree.
The way that the way that I said that, I don't even agree with it as I'm talking. They put their morals above the materialistic things of money.
Yeah.
And because they did that, it got in the way of them providing for their family. That's how I should say it.
Yeah, that's right.
They're putting, you should go after your passions. Don't do things that you don't want to do, over putting bread on the table, or
I
putting
think
a roof over your kid's head.
I think that is a worthy cause, but I still think there's a happy balance.
Absolutely.
Of that.
You can't have it. That's it. Is you can't have a dramatic version of either side.
Yeah.
And if you do, your kid is going to turn out messed up either way. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's a happy balance.
Yes.
And in some cases I was like, yeah, good for the mom for doing that. But then in other cases it just felt she was being too selfish. And
by the end of the book, I actually hated the mom.
Especially at the end. I don't want to spoil anything.
No. I don't want to either. But one of the quotes, I wrote it down because I was so mad at that line in the book. And the mom, her and Jeanette are in a fight. And she says, "Why do I always have to be the adult?"
Exactly.
And I stopped in that moment and I said, because you're the one that chose to have 4 kids. You're the one that chose to have a husband. You're the one that chose to have this life. You can't all of a sudden decide that now's the time for you to be an artist. You got to man up, woman up, and provide for these children. They are helpless. These are kids that you're talking about. And I just literally wanted to rip the pages of the book and throw it across the room, because I was like, you chose this life. Yeah. You did. So,
there are certain sacrifices you have to make for your kids.
Right.
And I don't think the mother ever thought about that. She was just like, no, fuck that. I'm going to be this artist, this free spirit. And me on the outside reading this book, I'm like, no, you have to sacrifice this for your kid. Like, they are starving right now. They're getting beaten up in school. Like, you have to do something.
Yeah.
And she just was like a free spirit about it.
Yeah.
It was frustrating to read.
So it's nice to be a free spirit or whatever. Like, I always wanted to be that as, in my early 20s or whatever. Yeah. But at the same time, you've got to step up and take responsibility for the things that you have put onto your own life. If you didn't want to have those 4 kids, that would be a whole nother story. You can be homeless and be an artist on the street, whatever. But these 4 other kids, they didn't choose this life. Yeah. You're the one that should be stepping up and taking responsibility for it. Totally. So that's the thing is, for me, coming out of this book, I'm like, what are the things that I have taken responsibility for in my life that I need to step up with? And whether it be something as simple as a car payment. Sure. Is that a responsibility that I've taken up on? Yes. Okay, then what do I need to do to make it happen? Because I signed up for it. And so whether it be having something as small as having a car payment all the way up to having a child, you signed up for it. You need to take responsibility for it.
You can't prioritize your art over that.
No, and that's why I was so mad. I was, by the end of it, I was just, I wanted to rip the pages out.
This is why I rated it a 4-star, is because on Goodreads, I rated it a 4-star on Goodreads, because, gosh, the passion that it brings up in you is why it's such a good book. You're like, I vehemently disagree with this person. Yeah. And I like when books bring that emotion out of you. I like when you get angry at a book because they're doing something that you think is morally wrong. And that's exactly the case here. Is this woman I do not agree with. I do not agree with what she's doing. Like, on the one hand I can say, yeah, it's cool, she's following her dreams, whatever. But on the other hand, you have a child. And that was enraging to me.
So why did you give it 4 stars if it brings out that passion?
Because a good book will allow you to recognize those emotions in yourself. A good book will enrage you, like it should spark some emotion in you and say, this is not how I want to live.
Right. And it did that. Yeah. So why is it -1 star?
Oh,
I guess is what I'm getting.
The only reason I didn't rate it a 5-star, and this is, man, it's hard to describe.
Try.
I will try.